What's up, guys? Today we're going to be talking about the iPhone 13 Pro. It's been 6 months since we've unboxed this phone. This is a phone that I actually really like. Don't talk about it that much. I've done a ton of comparisons with this phone as well too. If you guys want to check that out, gaming tests, all that good stuff. So please do check that out. But yeah, I put my main SIM back in this phone since maybe last week. So I've had it back in here for another it's been about 7 days. And yeah, I've been really enjoying this phone. I want to tell you guys the things that I really like about this phone, and also some of the things that I don't like about this phone, which surprisingly is really not as much as I thought. My opinions have changed slightly about this phone from the initial impressions video. So let's go ahead and get started. And I want to jump into the best thing about this phone, and it is the battery life. I am getting absolutely amazing battery life with this phone. The battery life for this size device is absolutely incredible. I can basically get 3 days of battery life with this phone on a single charge, which is absolutely crazy. So the battery life is not that big. It's a fairly small battery, but this is where the magic comes with these Apple devices. So this phone has a 3095 milliamp battery. It's got the fast charging, and then it's got the MagSafe wireless charging on here, as well as the standard wireless charging. When I say that the battery life is excellent on here for people who are just not heavy gamers and stuff like that, I really do mean it. So if you're not a heavy gamer, easily get up to 3 days. 3 days, then I have to kind of charge it, but 2 days is nothing to this phone. When I tell you that the battery life is incredible, it really is. If you do have a 13 Pro or a 13 Pro Max, let me know your battery life experience, because I've heard a lot of good things from 13 Pro and Max users saying that they get excellent battery life. I think Apple just knocked it out of the park this year. It's really amazing what they did with the battery life, especially at this size. So this being a smaller, I guess, flagship device. Since we're talking about the size of this phone, I do want to talk about how this thing feels in the hand. I really love the size of this phone. So, just to use for reference point, the S22 Ultra, you can see it's a big phone compared to the 13 Pro. And for people with smaller hands, I really like this form factor as far as the size goes. It's very comfortable. I don't feel like I have to shimmy the device a lot, and I can sort of reach the screen with one hand. I really do like this form factor a lot. I've always complained about bigger phones, so if you have smaller hands, this is actually a very comfortable phone size to use without having to have a super small display and stuff like that. But as far as the build quality, it is top notch on this phone. Of course, since you're paying $1,000, you've got this matte finish here. I think the design, it just has a very luxury, vibe to it. It's a really pretty looking phone. These big cameras right here. It just has a really nice feel to it. Stainless steel frame, which picks up a ton of fingerprints. So I don't know if I'm a huge fan of that. I find myself constantly having to wipe the frame down. And also, that's one thing about this phone. Even though I like the size, I don't like that Apple went with this sort of I guess boxy shape. Just for reference, I guess the iPhone XR's design, if you guys remember that phone, or the XS, it felt better in the hand. This kind of cuts into the hand if you just use it without a case. That's why I actually had to buy a case, because I usually try to rock my phones without a case, but this one just doesn't feel comfortable. Kind of leaves a mark in your hand. But yeah, so as far as the design and overall build quality, I really like it. I just don't like that Apple sort of went back to the sort of boxy design here. Now let's also talk about the display on the 13 Pro. It's a very good display here. It's a 6.1 inch display. Apple calls it their Super Retina XDR OLED display. It's a 120 hertz display this year. It's HDR10 as well. And you also have a 1170 by 2332 resolution with 460 ppi. It's got the ceramic glass on it as well too. And I've been pretty light with this phone, and I wanted to mention this. And it's got this little scratch right here. It's driven me crazy. So I thought the glass, and I'm telling you, I was really careful with this phone. It still picks up. I don't know if you guys can see that. It still picks up these micro scratches. So all that little fancy stuff that they be talking about, the glass is 10 times, 100 times stronger this year. It's just I don't think I have a phone on me that can't pick up those little micro scratches, which I hate. So you might, if you're like me, you're gonna have to pick up screen protector if that really annoys you. But also the display is gorgeous, very high res, very sharp display here. And of course we get to this notch, which I absolutely hate still. Now Apple's supposed to be doing away with it. They're supposed to be bringing a sort of punch hole design with the next iPhone. But the notch, you get used to it. They shrunk it this year, which was fine, but you can't really notice it. And a lot of people actually hate the shrunken notch because it can kind of interfere with content a little bit. But overall, I mean, it's smaller, but it doesn't really make a difference that much. But the display itself is really nice. You got thin bezels, great color. It gets fairly bright as well too. So overall, it's a pretty nice panel for the most part. Also, I want to talk about the processor with this phone. So the Apple A15 chip is just extremely fast with this guy. You also get 128 gigs of internal storage and 6 gigs of RAM. So like I was saying about speed, this phone is very fast speed wise. Gaming wise, it pretty much plays anything. You can see I can play PUBG at 90 frames. I can play it at the highest settings if I want. And I find this phone to not get as hot as like the new Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 if you're gaming for long periods of time. So basically doing anything on this phone is extremely fast. And just to show you guys the Geekbench scores, here are the Geekbench scores, and you can see there's crazy scores, and here are your Antutu scores as well too. So in general, the performance is just really snappy. It's really fast. I do notice that using Chrome on iPhones is just kind of glitchy. It's really glitchy. This is the only application that glitches like crazy. Just like not registering touches and stuff like that. It's actually a really crappy experience. But it doesn't do that in Safari. But yeah, so that's the only issue I've had with speed. Everything else runs pretty well. Alright guys, the next thing I want to touch on are the speakers. But before I let you guys hear the sound, this also has a really good vibration motor in here. It's very strong as well too, so that's something that I really like. But the speakers sound very good to me. Tons of bass, just super loud. So you can hear that, just tons of bass, super full sound with this guy. So overall, I'm really happy with the sound quality in both the vibration motors and the speakers. The top speaker gives off a good, nice crisp sound. It's not distorting or anything like that. So I really enjoy these speakers. The other additional features with this phone, of course, you have Apple Pay or NFC on this phone. You also have on here your Face ID, which has been updated to now work with like masks and stuff like that, which is really nice. As far as like the additional features, I wish Apple would just put not Face ID, but Touch ID in the power button and give us two options. So on Android, you have an in-display fingerprint sensor, and then you have Face Unlock. So if Apple can do that, I think they will have a awesome unlocking system. But it is good for Face ID. It's fine, but like I said, I really prefer having that two methods. Alright, so lastly, I want to talk about the image quality on the 13 Pro. The 13 Pro takes very good photos. Like I said, I would put it in my top 3. I personally prefer the Pixel 6 Pro as one of my favorite camera systems. I think the only thing that's kind of outdated about Apple's camera system is that they have a 12 megapixel main sensor. So on the Pixel, you just have higher resolution shots. So if you put them on a computer or you want to crop and edit something, you don't lose the detail, just like on the S22 Ultra 108 megapixel. So I think Apple eventually should upgrade this 12 megapixel sensor, but you got that, and then you got the 12 megapixel telephoto that does the 3x and then you also have the 12 megapixel ultra wide, and then Apple has a macro mode on here, which is extremely annoying. So basically you can't manually go to the macro, so if you want to get a close-up shot, it'll like switch it, but sometimes it'll switch it by itself when you don't want it to, and I find that extremely annoying. So there's supposed to be an update to fix that or make it manual, but so far they haven't done it, and it's just annoying. As far as the images themselves, they're what you expect from Apple, just great shots, great dynamic range, great coloring. My only issue is that sometimes you get like this really weird gray color, and it's just really weird. So let me know, do you guys get that kind of gray color on iPhones? It depends on the lighting. Like if you're in indoor lighting, you really get that kind of weird gray color. But yeah, overall the image quality is very good on here. It's about what you would expect. Video quality is top notch. It shoots at 4K, 24, 30, and 60. Then you have a 12 megapixel selfie cam that also does a fairly good job. It shoots at 4K, 24, 25, 30, and 60 as well too. I'll let you guys see that video. But overall, I'm really happy with the cameras. The nighttime photos come out pretty well too. Alright guys, here is just the standard video on the 13 Pro here. And it looks pretty good. You can bounce out to the ultra wide. And then we can go to our 3X. Alright, so that pretty much wraps it up for the 13 Pro. I think this phone is just awesome. I don't have a lot of complaints. Great battery life. I love the design. I love the size of this phone. Also, I think the only two things I don't like is that the notch just looks kind of outdated to me, even though it's smaller. And also, I feel like all $1,000 phones should have at least 256 gigs of internal storage instead of the 128 gigs. It's really easy if you shoot a lot of video to run out of space on here. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think this is extremely solid phone. I can't imagine anyone buying this phone and being like, this sucks, or they hate it, because the cameras are pretty solid on here. Performance is just top notch. And yeah, so I really like it. What do you guys think? Be sure to let me know, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.